Commander Zexstar clicked his mandibles in amusement as he watched the human soldier clean his ancient rifle. The weapon looked like something from a museum, with its wooden stock and simple metal construction. Around the alien commander, his elite Krillian shock troops shared the same disdainful expression. "Tell me again why the Galactic Defense Council insisted on including these primitives in our operation," Zexstar said to his lieutenant, loud enough for the humans to hear. His voice carried the clicking undertones typical of his insectoid species. Lieutenant Vaxmall's four eyes glinted with malicious humor. "The Council believes in giving everyone a chance to contribute, sir, even if that contribution is merely serving as cannon fodder." The human squad of 12 soldiers continued their preparations without acknowledging the alien remarks. Their leader, Sergeant Maria Santos, methodically checked each weapon in their small arsenal. Unlike the sleek energy weapons carried by their alien allies, the human equipment looked crude and outdated. Bolt-action rifles, a few automatic weapons, and what appeared to be communications gear that belonged in a scrapyard. The mission briefing had been clear. An enemy fortress on the planet Zirian Prime needed to be taken. The fortress housed a critical data core containing intelligence about rebel movements across 3 star systems. The Krillian forces would handle the main assault while the humans provided support operations. A polite way of saying they would guard the landing zone while the real soldiers did the actual fighting. Zexstar's troops carried plasma rifles that could punch through starship hull plating. Their armor incorporated personal energy shields and enhanced strength servos. Each soldier was worth 10 ordinary fighters, and they knew it. The addition of a human contingent to their operation felt like an insult to their professional capabilities. "Sergeant Santos," Zexstar called out, his translator rendering his words in crisp English. "I trust your people understand they are to remain at the landing coordinates until we secure the facility. We cannot afford to have untrained personnel interfering with precision military operations." Santos looked up from her rifle, meeting the alien commander's compound eyes without flinching. "We understand our orders, sir. We'll hold the perimeter and wait for your signal." "Good. See that you do." Zexstar turned away dismissively. Perhaps after today's operation, the Council will realize that not every species is suited for modern warfare. The transport ship shuddered as it entered Zirian Prime's atmosphere. Through the viewport, the alien fortress came into view. A massive crystalline structure rising from barren, rocky terrain. Its surfaces gleamed with energy fields, and defensive turrets tracked their approach with mechanical precision. The fortress had never fallen to direct assault, and its automated defenses had destroyed dozens of attack ships over the past year. As the transport touched down 2 kilometers from the fortress, Zexstar's troops immediately deployed in perfect formation. Their movements were fluid and coordinated, each soldier knowing exactly where to position themselves. Energy weapons powered up with high-pitched whines, and tactical displays showed optimal attack vectors. The humans gathered near their equipment crates, apparently content to set up a basic defensive position around the landing zone. Santos distributed ammunition while her communications specialist began assembling what looked like an oversized radio antenna. Other squad members took positions behind natural rock formations, their primitive rifles aimed toward the fortress approach routes. "Movement detected," announced Vaxmall, consulting his tactical scanner. "Defensive drones launching from the fortress. Estimate 47 autonomous units incoming." Zexstar nodded with satisfaction. This would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate proper military doctrine to their human observers. Standard suppression pattern. Advance by sections, maintain overlapping fields of fire. Show these primitives how a real military force operates. The Krillian troops moved forward with mechanical precision. Their plasma rifles opened fire as the first wave of defensive drones crested the rocky ridgeline. Brilliant energy bolts lit up the alien sky, and several drones exploded in spectacular displays of sparking circuitry and twisted metal. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more appeared. The fortress defenses were more extensive than intelligence had suggested. Energy beams lanced out from hidden turret positions, forcing the Krillian advance to slow and seek cover. What should have been a quick suppression action turned into a grinding firefight. "Sir," Vaxmall reported, ducking behind a boulder as enemy fire scorched the air above his head. "Defensive positions are more heavily fortified than anticipated. Drones are exhibiting adaptive combat protocols. They're learning from our tactics." Zexstar's mandibles clacked with frustration. His elite troops were pinned down barely 500 meters from their starting position. The fortress' automated defenses were proving more sophisticated than anyone had expected. Energy shields deflected their plasma fire, while return volleys forced constant tactical repositioning. Behind them, at the landing zone, the humans continued their preparations with what seemed like casual indifference to the intense battle raging ahead. Santos consulted a handheld device while her team finished assembling their equipment. Whatever they were building looked nothing like standard military hardware. "Commander," came an urgent transmission from his forward scouts. "Additional defensive systems activating. Heavy weapons platforms emerging from concealed positions. Sir, we're facing coordinated resistance from multiple vectors." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Zextar's perfectly planned assault was turning into a disaster. His troops were taking casualties from weapon systems that shouldn't have existed. The fortress was revealing defensive capabilities that intelligence had completely missed. As energy bolts continued to streak across the battlefield, Zextar began to wonder if the Galactic Defense Council had made a serious error in their assessment of this target. His elite soldiers were among the best in known space, but they were being systematically outmaneuvered by automated systems that seemed to anticipate their every move. The fortress loomed ahead, its crystalline surface now blazing with active weapon systems. What had seemed like a simple military operation was becoming a test of survival. And somewhere behind him, the primitive humans were still calmly assembling their ancient equipment, apparently unconcerned by the chaos unfolding around them. The real battle for Zirion Prime was just beginning. The sound started as a distant rumble, barely audible over the crackling energy weapons and exploding drones. Zextar barely noticed it at first, too focused on the tactical disaster unfolding around his pinned forces. His elite Krillian troops were scattered behind whatever cover they could find, their sophisticated weapons unable to penetrate the fortress's adaptive defenses. "Sir, we've lost contact with 3rd Squad," Vaxmal reported through gritted teeth, his translator struggling with the stress in his voice. "The defensive systems are coordinating their attacks. They're picking us off section by section." The rumble grew louder, developing into a rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Several Krillian soldiers looked around nervously, trying to identify the source of the strange sound. Their advanced sensors couldn't pinpoint its origin, which only added to their growing unease. Behind them, Sergeant Santos spoke quietly into her radio. "Phoenix 1, this is ground control. Target coordinates confirmed. You are cleared for attack run." The voice that crackled back through her primitive communication system was crisp and professional. "Copy, ground control. Phoenix 1 inbound. ETA 30 seconds. Zextar caught fragments of the transmission and felt his mandibles twitch with confusion. What was the human talking about? Their intelligence reports had indicated that humans possessed no aerospace assets capable of combat operations. Their species was barely capable of interplanetary travel, let alone military aviation. The thumping sound intensified, and suddenly it became recognizable. Rotor blades. Something was flying toward them, low and fast, using the terrain to mask its approach, but that was impossible. Humans didn't have aircraft capable of atmospheric combat operations. "What is that noise?" demanded one of the Krillian soldiers, his energy weapon swinging wildly as he searched for the source. Then it appeared. Rising from behind a rocky outcropping like some mechanical predator, the helicopter was unlike anything in the galactic military databases. Its design was crude, angular, and absolutely primitive by modern standards. Instead of sleek energy weapons or sophisticated missile systems, it carried what appeared to be an enormous rotating barrel assembly mounted beneath its nose. "By the void," whispered Vaxmal, staring at the approaching aircraft. "What is that thing?" Santos grinned as she watched the ancient UH-1 Huey rise into view, its rotor wash kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The helicopter had been retrofitted with a 6-barrel M134 minigun, a weapon so old it predated galactic civilization by centuries. But age didn't matter when it came to putting projectiles downrange. "That, Lieutenant," Santos called out cheerfully, "is what we call air support." The pilot's voice crackled through her radio again. "Ground control, I have eyes on multiple targets, fortress defenses and drone swarms. Request permission to engage. Phoenix 1, you are weapons free. Light them up." What happened next defied everything the Galactic military thought they knew about human combat doctrine. The helicopter swept across the battlefield like an avenging angel, and the minigun began to spin. The sound was indescribable. 6,000 rounds per minute of pure kinetic energy erupted from the rotating barrels in a continuous stream of destruction. The primitive projectiles, simple pieces of metal accelerated by chemical explosives, tore through the sophisticated defensive drones like they were made of tissue paper. Energy shields designed to deflect plasma beams and particle weapons were completely useless against solid projectiles. The drones' adaptive combat protocols, so effective against energy weapons, couldn't adjust to the simple physics of metal bullets traveling at high velocity. "Impossible!" breathed Zextar, watching in stunned amazement as drone after drone exploded under the helicopter's withering fire. Those are kinetic projectiles, crude chemical propellants. The technology is thousands of years obsolete, but obsolete or not, it was devastatingly effective. The helicopter banked and turned with surprising agility, its pilot demonstrating skills that would have impressed any galactic fighter ace. The ancient aircraft danced between energy beams from the fortress turrets while continuing its relentless barrage. Santos spoke into her radio again. "Phoenix 1, can you suppress those turret positions? My people are ready to advance. Copy that. Making my run now." The helicopter dove toward the fortress, its minigun tracking across the crystalline defensive positions. The stream of projectiles shattered energy emitters and destroyed sensor arrays with mechanical precision. Turrets that had seemed invincible moments before sparked and died under the primitive but effective bombardment. The fortress's automated systems tried to adapt to this new threat, but their programming had never encountered anything like kinetic weapons. Energy shields flickered and failed as solid projectiles punched through them. Defensive calculations based on plasma physics and particle beams were useless against simple bullets traveling in ballistic trajectories. "Sir," Vaxmol stammered, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "The defensive grid is collapsing. How are they doing this?" Zextar had no answer. According to every tactical manual he had ever studied, the human weapons should have been ineffective against advanced military technology. Energy shields, adaptive armor, and sophisticated point defense systems were specifically designed to counter modern threats. No one had bothered to program defenses against weapons that galactic civilization had abandoned millennia ago. The helicopter completed its strafing run and pulled up sharply, smoke trailing from several minor hits to its armored hull. But the aircraft was still flying, still fighting, and still proving that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. "Ground control. This is Phoenix 1, the pilot reported. "First pass complete. Defensive grid is down approximately 60%. Ready for second run." Santos checked her tactical display, noting the positions of scattered drone wreckage and smoking turret emplacements. "Negative, Phoenix 1. Save your ammunition. We'll take it from here." She turned to her squad, who were already moving forward with their primitive rifles ready. The Krillian soldiers watched in amazement as the humans advanced with confidence across terrain that had been a killing ground just minutes before. "Move out," Santos ordered. "Standard infantry advance. Watch for remaining automated defenses, but the bird cleared us a nice path." As the human soldiers jogged past the still-stunned alien forces, one of them called out cheerfully to Zextar. "Thanks for keeping them busy while we set up, Commander. We'll take it from here." The helicopter circled overhead like a mechanical guardian angel, its ancient rotors beating the air with primitive efficiency. Below, 12 human soldiers with weapons older than galactic civilization prepared to assault a fortress that had never fallen to conventional attack. Zextar realized that the Galactic Defense Council's assessment had been completely wrong. The humans weren't primitive at all. They were something far more dangerous. They were innovative. While the rest of the galaxy had embraced sophisticated energy weapons and complex defensive systems, humans had perfected the art of making old technology work in new ways. The battle for Zirion Prime was far from over, but the momentum had shifted dramatically. And it had shifted because of a helicopter and a machine gun that any galactic engineer would have dismissed as museum pieces. The fortress entrance loomed before them, its crystalline surface scarred and smoking from the helicopter's devastating attack run. Sergeant Santos crouched behind a fallen defensive turret, studying the massive doorway that had been sealed for over a year. Her squad spread out in a tactical formation that looked deceptively casual but covered all angles of approach. Phoenix 1, can you give us a damage assessment on that entrance? Santos spoke quietly into her radio. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled back immediately. Ground control, I count multiple breaches in the outer defensive shell. Main entrance appears intact, but I'm seeing secondary access points that might be viable. Want me to open a few doors for you? Negative. Phoenix 1. Hold position and provide overwatch. We'll handle the breach. Behind them, Commander Zexstar and his remaining Krillian troops approached cautiously, their advanced weapons at the ready. The alien commander's mandibles clicked with a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. His elite soldiers had been pinned down for over an hour, but the humans had crossed the same ground in 15 minutes. "Sergeant!" Zexstar called out, his translator rendering his insectoid speech patterns into crisp military English. "Our sensors indicate significant defensive systems still active within the structure. Perhaps we should wait for additional support before attempting entry." Santos didn't look back as she responded. "Appreciate the concern, Commander, but we've got this covered. Sometimes the direct approach works best." Private Johnson, the squad's demolitions expert, was already placing charges around what appeared to be a secondary maintenance hatch. His equipment looked like it belonged in an ancient museum: chemical explosives instead of plasma cutters, manual timers instead of sophisticated detonation systems. But as the helicopter had demonstrated, sometimes old technology had unexpected advantages. "Charges set, Sergeant," Johnson reported. 30-second fuse. Should give us a nice, clean entry. "All right, people," Santos announced to her squad. "Standard room clearing procedures. Watch your corners, mind your ammunition, and remember that we're dealing with automated defenses that don't negotiate." Questions? There were none. Her soldiers checked their weapons one final time, their movements economical and professional. The bolt-action rifles that had earned such scorn from the Krillian forces were held with the easy competence of troops who knew exactly what their equipment could do. The explosion was modest by Galactic standards. No brilliant energy discharge or exotic matter effects. Just a simple chemical blast that punched a ragged hole through the fortress wall. But it was effective, creating an opening large enough for the assault team to enter. Smoke and debris cleared to reveal the fortress interior, a maze of crystalline corridors filled with the hum of active technology. Defensive sensors immediately detected the breach, and warning lights began flashing as automated systems prepared to repel the invaders. Santos led her squad through the opening with practiced efficiency. The ancient rifles that had seemed so primitive suddenly revealed their advantages in the close confines of indoor combat. No energy signatures to track, no electromagnetic emissions to detect. The fortress's sophisticated sensors were designed to identify modern military equipment, not weapons that relied on simple mechanical action and chemical propellants. The first defensive robot rounded a corner with plasma cannons charging, its targeting system scanning for energy weapon signatures and powered armor. It found nothing. The human soldiers, carrying equipment that registered as essentially inert matter, appeared as barely significant life signs rather than military threats. Johnson's rifle barked once, the sound sharp and immediate in the crystalline hallways. The robot's central processor housing exploded in a shower of sparks and fragments as the solid projectile punched through its protective casing. No energy shield had activated because the fortress's defensive protocols didn't recognize kinetic threats as requiring countermeasures. "Clean kill," Santos noted with satisfaction. "These corridors are going to funnel their response patterns." The squad advanced through the fortress interior with methodical precision. Each room was cleared systematically, each corridor checked for defensive positions. The ancient rifles proved devastatingly effective against technology designed to counter modern weapons. Energy shields flickered uselessly as bullets punched through them. Adaptive armor that could deflect plasma beams shattered under kinetic impact. Outside, the helicopter continued its patrol, occasionally engaging defensive positions that tried to emerge from concealed locations. The ancient minigun had become the bane of sophisticated military technology, turning advanced defensive systems into expensive scrap metal, with primitive but effective firepower. Zexstar followed the human assault with growing amazement. His tactical displays showed the fortress's defensive grid collapsing section by section as the primitive soldiers advanced. Systems that should have been impregnable were failing against weapons that any galactic engineer would have dismissed as obsolete curiosities. "How are they doing this?" Vaxmal asked, staring at his scanner readings. "Their equipment shouldn't be capable of penetrating advanced defensive systems." "That's exactly why it's working," Zextar realized with sudden clarity. The fortress was designed to defend against galactic military technology, energy weapons, plasma rifles, particle beams. No one programmed it to handle kinetic projectiles because no civilized military force has used them for millennia. The truth was both simple and profound. Humanity's technological development had followed a completely different path than the rest of galactic civilization. While other species had embraced energy weapons and sophisticated defensive systems, humans had perfected the art of propelling simple projectiles at high velocity. It was primitive, crude, and absolutely unstoppable against defenses designed for a completely different type of warfare. Deep within the fortress, Santos and her squad reached the central data core. The chamber was protected by the most sophisticated defensive systems in the structure. Energy barriers that could stop starship weapons, automated turrets with targeting systems that could track hypersonic missiles. None of it mattered. The energy barriers were tuned to deflect coherent energy beams and charged particles. Simple bullets passed through them like they didn't exist. The targeting systems, programmed to track fast-moving energy signatures, couldn't lock onto projectiles that followed ballistic trajectories with no electromagnetic emissions. "Johnson, can you crack that data core?" Santos asked, indicating the crystalline structure at the chamber's center. "No problem, Sergeant." The demolitions expert placed a small charge with practiced efficiency. Chemical explosive, low-velocity fragmentation. Should pop it open without damaging the contents. The explosion was barely more than a firecracker by galactic standards, but it was perfectly calibrated for the task. The data core's protective casing cracked open like an egg, revealing the quantum storage matrices that contained years of vital intelligence. "Phoenix 1, this is ground control," Santos reported, package secured, ready for extraction. The helicopter pilot's response was immediate. "Copy that, ground control. Landing zone is clear. Coming in for pickup." As the human squad prepared to extract with their prize, Zextar finally understood what the Galactic Defense Council had really sent to Zirian Prime. Not primitive allies who needed protection, but specialists with tools perfectly suited for a specific job. The humans hadn't been included as cannon fodder. They had been the primary assault force all along. The helicopter touched down outside the fortress, its rotors kicking up clouds of debris from the destroyed defensive positions. Santos and her squad jogged toward the aircraft with the captured data core, their mission complete in less than 2 hours. As they boarded the ancient aircraft, Santos paused to salute the stunned Krillian commander. "Thanks for the backup, sir. Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways." The helicopter lifted off with its cargo of primitive soldiers and priceless intelligence, leaving behind a fortress that had resisted galactic military forces for over a year. It had fallen to 12 humans with weapons older than interstellar travel and a helicopter that any modern engineer would have scrapped for parts. Zextar watched them disappear into the alien sky and began composing his after-action report. The Galactic Defense Council would want to know how a fortress deemed impregnable had been taken by forces using obsolete technology. He suspected the answer would revolutionize military thinking across known space. Sometimes the most sophisticated defense was no defense at all against an enemy who fought by completely different rules. And humanity, as they had just proven, played by their own rules entirely. The age of energy weapons and sophisticated defensive systems suddenly seemed a lot less invincible. Somewhere in the galaxy, military planners were going to have to account for the possibility that their enemies might show up with primitive kinetic weapons and ancient aircraft. The humans had just reminded everyone that innovation wasn't about having the newest technology. It was about using any technology in ways your enemy never expected.